Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Very excited to have you today for James Ferrara's monthly rendezvous. Should I say this? Tarot
Sure.
talk show. I'm really excited. Well, first to be able to attend and then to witness the whole magic today, and also to welcome Leslie, which I'm a great admirer of. So.
Oh, thank
I've
you.
I'm gonna leave the floor to James, and I'm gonna. If
Letty
that's
is
okay, I don't want to be rude. I'm just gonna erase my video so I can just look ugly and
no, just
and
sit back,
slouch.
enjoy, and be a participant for once.
Exactly. See you later.
All right. Um, so welcome to Tarot Talk Show and welcome Leslie. I'm
Hi, thanks.
here with Lezley Saar today, who is an incredible artist. I'm sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you, but I love your work and I'm excited to have you here to talk about it and to pull cards with you. Leslie is a painter and a mixed media artist who lives in Los Angeles. She has a prolific body of work that intersects in many different areas through gender identity and race and beauty and normalcy, escapism, sanity. I read that from somebody else's description of your from your bio. Um, of topics that Leslie explores in her work. Um, Her work is held in museums around the world, and currently she has one show that's open in Los Angeles at the Fellows of Contemporary Art in downtown through August 23rd called Wide Awake in Dreamland. And there's another uh, body of work that will be presented in the Philosophical Research Society Library, um, beginning on August 16th for Echoes from the Threshold, a Surrealist Ball. Um, that's not the title of the work that will be displayed there, though, but that's the title of the event. So if you want to see her work in person and you're in the Los Angeles area or going to be in the LA area, you can do that. Um, and then I just wanted to say that I came to Leslie's art through an exhibition at the Craft Contemporary Museum in Los Angeles called Diorama Drama. Um, the art critic Nancy K. Turner says about that show, Saar here creates fantastically inventive narratives of soothsayers and seers who use amulets, bones, and tinctures to fix what is broken, find what is lost, or cure all manner of maladies. Um, that work, that body of work, through those living dioramas, which the way that Leslie created them was so that in order to fully engage and understand the artwork, you had to immerse yourself in it, walk around it. You could be a part of that diorama, of the various dioramas created in the show. Um, I had never seen anything like it. It moved me both emotionally and spiritually and intellectually. And I posted some photos, and Leslie commented on one of them and said, "That's the best picture that someone took at the exhibition," and it just made me feel so good. And we began a bit of an online dialogue and have met since then as well. Leslie's also currently one of the artists in residence at the Philosophical Research Society, and so I'm very excited to welcome Leslie to Tarot Talk
Oh, thank
Show.
you. I'm excited to be here. Really
Um,
fun.
And so the way that we do Tarot Talk Show, for those of you who've been here before, um, already know, and for those of you who haven't been here before, uh, I pull cards from the tarot. Leslie and I haven't talked about what we're going to talk about today, but I pull cards from the tarot to help guide the conversation. Um, I'm using a deck today that I'm really in love with, created by Lisa Sevigny. It's called the Ebony Tarot. Um, it's a relatively new photographic tarot. Was shot in Montreal, Canada, where Lisa is from, and it's just a really gorgeous and profound deck that is in the Rider-Waite-Smith style, but shows different aspects of what you might traditionally think of in those cards. Um, one thing I did want to mention before I start pulling the cards is that um, Leslie Leslie comes from a legacy family of artists, and I think that that's something that's really special. And I hope we pull some cards. We can talk a little bit about what that was like growing up in such a creative atmosphere. Um, you have a sister who's a visual artist, another sister who's a writer. Your father was a ceramicist, and your mother is also a mixed media artist.
Right.
Um, and I wanted to mention that Betty's one of Betty's paintings, because of the tarot focus, is called House of Tarot. She created in 1966, and it's held at the Museum of Modern Art collection in New York. And I believe, I'm not asking you to confirm this or not, but I believe I've read that she incorporated one or some of her own tarot cards into the painting as part of the collage.
Right.
So it's certainly something worth checking out, and we'll explore a little bit, hopefully, of that aspect of your life as well and growing up. So I'm going to pull the first card and see what it has to say. And so it's interesting. I was talking about family because this is the Three
Yeah,
of Cups, and you have two sisters, right?
right. The three of us.
Um, and this feels very much, I don't know, this kind of has the vibe of what I've read in interviews where you are talking with the three of you together, that you seem to get
Hmm.
along really well. And um, does this sort of express that
Yeah, I have
relationship?
to say, like, our family is just really blessed in how we all get along so well. And the three of us sisters, there's just us three sisters. Um, yeah, we really, really get along so well, and the love is so strong. And people often think, oh, is there competition, animosity, or jealousy, all of us being involved in the arts? And I always say, well, the family is more important. The love for the family always comes first before what other people may have in their minds, or project as far as these sort of arbitrary constructs of success related to happiness and everything. So that always comes first. It's just the love and appreciation, and it may sound cheesy, but I don't know what we all did to deserve it, but it's really true. We're really tight. We grew up sharing the same bedroom, the same of all three of us in the same bedroom growing up.
Oh, wow.
So we're tight. I'm the oldest. Allison's 3 years younger, and uh, Tracy, the one who's the writer, she's 8 years younger. So um, yeah, we're pretty
Ha
tight.
have you guys ever collaborated in the work throughout the years?
One time we did do a show at Barnstable, which is now called the Municipal Art Gallery. And yeah, we've done collaborations in the sense that we each will sort of do separate pieces and they're shown together in an exhibition. We had a show that traveled called Family Legacies. But again, that was more, although we did do a collaboration for my father who passed away, Richard Saar. My mom and sister did a collaboration called Grigri House, I think, or House of Mojo, which is now at CAM, California African American Museum.
Hmm.
But that was back in the 90s. So, not really in the sense of creating one piece, aside from that one that Allison and Betty did, but more like having shown together and having that exhibition travel.
And how about when you guys were growing up? How was that intersection between your imaginations and your creativity there with the difference in ages between you?
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned Barnstall. I read that you guys took some classes there when you were growing
Right.
up and did
Yeah.
some
Uh-huh.
things. So were you guys perhaps not in the sense that we think of collaboration as creating with intent and strategy a piece of work, but just how that worked for you growing up, or how
Mhm.
it was like for you growing up in that world of imagination with your two sisters.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we did take classes at Barnesville, which was great, and I made a um, like 8 millimeter film called the Hot Water Bottle, and I had my sister Allison in it, dressed in some Victorian thing, and just growing up in Laurel Canyon, which at the time was a pretty inexpensive place to buy a house. My mom and dad bought a house, and it would rain, and we would explore because there had been a big fire there. Houdini, the magician's house had burned down, and the
Mm.
flames went up our street, and there are a lot of burnt out ruins there, and we would go exploring after rains because there was a dirt road, and we would find like melted bottle pieces and bits of mosaic and china and stuff like that. And so that's really quite young. At the time, my mom was a printmaker, but I think my mom doing mixed media, Allison incorporating found objects, and myself, that goes way back to childhood of exploring. And um, yeah, it was just so much fun to go to these burnt out places where only the chimney was left, and just kind of playing outdoors. I'm kind of long in the tooth, so this is long before any types of social media or iPhones and such. So we'd just be out in the hills playing and using our imagination, that way. And um, definitely, I think that was sort of a family thing and a thing that was inspired by both of our parents growing up.
And that, I mean, I can relate to that. I'm kind of long in the tooth myself. And going outside and playing and getting out of the house and playing in the dirt and all of that. When you had uh when you were doing that and exploring and collecting things, did that just sort of happen organically, or was there some sort of um uh what's the right word, reverberation or an echo of seeing your mom collecting objects and doing things with them? I know you said that she was a printmaker at this time, so I don't know how
Mhm.
much she was doing of that, but was there like, oh, this is cool, connected with another generation, or just kids going out and finding
It was just
stuff?
kids going out and just collecting stuff, not with any intent of making, art out of it. And it would just rain, and there'd be these gullies in the dirt street, and stuff would reveal itself underneath the mud. And it was just really fun to go out in the rain and look for things, and just explore that way. And we sort of always have our eye to the ground to find some strange thing to pick up that might be incorporated.
Do you still do
Nowadays we
that?
think, yeah, now we think about it more in terms of, oh, okay, maybe I can use this. But certainly back then it was just us having fun.
Do you still have any of those things like from your childhood that you've
I
collected
do
in a
have
tin or
something.
anything?
Yeah, I do have something that I made because I found a bunch of tins and some sort of old piece of weathered wood, and just hammered some tin things on it just to have something to do with my hands. I still have little things like that from when I was this would be in the 1960s. And we made dolls and jewelry, and my mom always had us doing projects and pulling weeds, and just she was always at us out there doing something. I want a table, help me put the mosaics on this table. So a lot of it was more as a lot of cultures, art is more incorporated into life and
Mm.
necessity, and um, objects that are utilitarian. um, so I kind of like that idea of art not being necessarily this precious thing that's a commodity that only wealthy people can afford, but it being really more part of daily life.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that you said one time that um, you don't have to have money with art to have beauty. And then your mother said, but you have to have imagination.
Yeah, yeah. I if I can be an Aries and say what's really on my mind.
Oh,
A lot
please.
of art I feel is sadly lacking in imagination. There's just a lot of like, oh my God. I think one time I put together like a saving on Instagram and I just titled it Same. And so many artists that just did the same type of thing of just somebody sitting on a chair with a background. You know, gosh, where's the imagination? Like, where's just something that's of interest? And um, for me, that's always sort of the more important part is kind of the concept behind it and the thoughts and the imagination. I'm not really technically trained, that's not my forte. But yeah, that's just a huge, I just don't like the things that are basic, banal, boring.
It's
Three
incredible
B's.
that you know, that uh, I think that it's a testament to your family that your imagination wasn't crushed like so many people's imaginations. I mean, crushed is a very strong word, but suppressed, right? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, a lot of children grow up uh, with very expansive imaginations, and it's not encouraged
Right.
to foster that.
Mm-hmm. No, I
So
think we're
I'm
quite
so
fortunate.
happy that I pulled
Yes,
this
it's
card for
great.
your first card.
Yeah, talk about the family first.
Yeah. Well, and especially like your sisters and your relationship with your sisters
Mm-hmm.
and even like in this card, I see the difference in ages between
Mm-hmm.
the figures as they're portrayed here in the card, and that
Mm-hmm.
seems to resonate as well
Mm-hmm.
um, with you because you're closer in age to Allison than you are
Right.
to
Uh-huh.
Tracy, right?
Right. But I
Um,
mean, those kinds of those are just numbers. I mean, if we're all at the airport,
sure.
Tracy's the airport brain and she's the youngest, so it's not really like I'm always the big sister.
Well, I read somewhere that she said one time, uh, I'm the only one who's ever had a real job. I'm the only one who's had a corporate
You
job.
might have said that, yeah.
Or if she was misquoted, so I don't
Yeah.
know. Um, next up, we got a lot of
Ah.
really expansive um, and bright, literally bright cards here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what what comes to mind for me when I see this in regard to you and your work is although you work a lot of your work and the imagination that you free yourself with in your work that's really evident. I mean, it's it's surrealistic, it's mystical. Other work seems very grounded, but it's all there's a liminal space that you are working in, but it doesn't feel dark.
Mm.
And there's there's a light you shine in that world that brings it to life. I know that there's a lot of monochromatic work, especially with some of the collage work that you do,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of color in your work as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can you talk a little bit about when you come to a piece or you come to an idea, whether it's a series or an individual piece, where that when you're working in that color, when you're painting in that way, I'm thinking of some of
Mm-hmm.
those egg paintings especially. Like,
Mm-hmm.
where does that color come from? Where does that brightness come from?
Oh, okay, that's a really good question. Well, my latest series, which is called Saudade, and Saudade is a word, Portuguese word that means like a melancholic. It's very difficult. There's not one word in English to translate it, but it's basically a melancholic feeling, a longing for some place or someone that you're no longer with. So
Mm,
it sort of stems from the Portuguese being fishermen and they're out at sea and just longing for their homeland. And it's a big word in Portugal, and it comes through a lot of in their fado music, and also the music from Capo Verde and other kind of countries in the Portuguese diaspora. So usually the color scheme is related to the theme of the exhibition. So this last show is rather colorful because I was very taken with, I went to the Gulbenkian Museum in Lisbon. And well, first I should say every year I try to spend 3 months in Lisbon. I'm really frugal the other 9 months, so I can go to stay in Lisbon. And this time before last year, I was at the Gulbenkian, and they have a beautiful collection of Lalique, who does these beautiful sculptures and Art Nouveau jewelry of bats and dragonflies, and there's quite a color scheme to it. That's quite colorful. So I was for this most recent series had that color scheme in mind. Plus, walking around Lisbon, it's a colorful city. The facades of the buildings have these tiles and gorgeous like emerald green and yellows and pale blues. And so the actual theme of the show, Saudade, is kind of a beautiful, sad feeling, but I chose to express it with these bright colors to kind of add to the tension. And also the theme of the show was me reconciling being very much in love with Lisbon, yet completely aware of their horrible historic past of enslavement and colonization. So I did portraits in this show of actual women from the diaspora, various countries like Brazil that were colonized or where enslaved people were taken from Africa, like Mozambique or Angola, Capo Verde, actual people from history, and doing their portraits. And within the portraits, having it this bright color scheme, even though it's a subject of enslaved people, usually they were women I chose who had overcome their adversity. It did something quite interesting in life, whether they became singers or, I don't know, somehow got out of their situation. So the actual topic might be kind of dark or conflicted with positive and light, just like me trying to deal with, okay, how do I resolve this feeling of loving being in Lisbon because it feels so good and laid back and slower. How do I like resolve that with their horrid past, you know? So that was a really long answer.
No,
But
it
I'm
was
also
brilliant.
really
And
drawn to dark gothic themes, but that kind of stuff gives me comfort. So if I'm going to portray it, even if it's monochromatically, I get comfort from watching like dark movies, like slow films, like Bela Tar or that kind of thing. They're comforting to me. So the actual work of art is comforting, at least to me. So maybe that's an answer why it could be still monochromatic, but not feel dark.
right. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And as you were speaking, I was thinking, um, I was making the connection between your love of Portugal and the time you like to spend there, and watching your Instagram posts, which I love following when you're over there. And also living in Los Angeles, these are two very sun uh, set centric
Right, exactly.
countries or cities.
Mm-hmm.
And and then when you were talking about the show, um, it made me think a lot of people connect the pale horse of the sun card to the horse in the death card in the tarot. And
Yes.
so as a progression of that, the sun can be the rebirth that the death card, the ending of what the death card represents. It's not a rebirth card, but the rebirth comes after it, and we can see that through the child in the horse, riding on the pale horse. Um, so there's a sense of that melancholy that you were talking about, and then shining a light
Mm-hmm.
on those women's stories and those
Interesting.
stories of enslavement. So as you were speaking, I began to connect even more to how this card relates to the work
Hmm.
that you're talking about.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, they're both quite sunny places and they're both near water, and but the stress level is a lot lower over there. I get
Yeah, the
so
stress
stressed in
level in
LA.
Los Angeles is kind of
For me, it's
on a
difficult.
higher. Um, well, let's see. let's see if we're going where we're going on the scale of relaxation or not here. And you know, I knew I was going to pull the magician card today for you. For some reason,
Huh.
I just felt it coming. And part of the reason for that is because as I was reading more about your work and how how you create, I kept you were talking about going out and finding things, right, when you were a kid. But I've also read about in terms of sourcing, as you guys were talking about sourcing growing up through thrift stores and swap meets and
Hmm.
personal collections of curios that you may have, and just sort of pulling from all the different realms, all the different elements from earth, from fire, from air, from water, to
Hmm.
create something, to unify it, to bring all kinds of disparate items together into a collective whole of meaning and beauty.
Hmm.
And I was wondering if you could talk a little
That's
bit about
nice.
that process of how how is it that you see what you see, how you bring it together. Do some things sit
Mm.
around for a long time before they actually show up in your
Yes,
work, and some things immediately go right? Like, how does
right.
it work for you?
Yeah, well, in my studio, I have a lot of fabrics because I do, as well as paintings, I'll do these figures, conjurers. That was kind of foray into fashion, or large banners that are sort of like tapestry, where I sew together different fabrics that I've collected a lot of times at thrift stores or swap meets, or all of us are always saying, "Oh, hey, would you like this?" As far as my mom and sister, or we're like, keep an eye. One of us is at a swap meet, or just things that are found. So I have lots of things in boxes as far as like for future use and such. And I don't like ever doing a painting just on a white canvas. I like to always start on something. So I've done paintings on old record albums before. I did a series of gangster rap artists back in the late 90s called Rap Thugs and Dimes. I always do portraits. It's a portrait of somebody, whether they're real or imagined, but that was actual uh, gangster rap artists from the 90s that I done that show about. So that would be a painting on record albums that I just had collected, or on books. I've done lots of taking old books and carving them out and putting paintings inside of books. Or if I am going to do something that's more traditional, a painting, I'm never going to just start on a white canvas. I'm going to put some fabric, whether I found that fabric at a swap meet or at Joann's with all the other house frows. It's very sad that Joann Fabrics closed here in LA. But yeah, I just like starting with something that has some sort of history, either whether I've collected it, has some sort of age, some mystery to it, that adds a level to it, a certain level to it. And then with the starting with the portrait, it's maybe not such a question relating to materials, but I like to have that layer too. And that's why I employ surrealism or symbolism, just to give other attributes to not linear descriptions of this person's life, but just something. Well, for me, I'm going off on this other tangent, sorry.
No,
For
please.
me, I'll use surrealism. Now you can juxtapose objects, and that can be a surrealistic approach as well. But in a painterly fashion, where I'm just painting, I like using surrealism because it's just going to make somebody go like, "What?" Like question it. So I may take a topic that's very current. I did a series on trans people called Gender Renaissance. I have a trans son, and he was going through all of his procedures and transitioning while I was doing this show. I always pick some subject that's currently going on with me. So, how do you throw in? I'm not just going to do a contemporary painting of someone who's ostensibly trans. I'm going to throw in different references and a surrealistic approach to make somebody just go like, what, and start thinking about it in their own way, and maybe through that questioning start questioning um, their constructs and their opinions on gender. It's a good way to pose question without like being flat-footed and dogmatic and saying this is, you know, trans power or something like that. And then also I was recently reading Aimé Césaire, who is a was a surrealist poet from um, from Martinique, and he had written this book called Discourse on Colonialism, back to colonialism, my other
Yeah.
show. And he was saying how surrealism is revolutionary because it changes your mind. And I just love that quote. I hadn't
Mm.
really thought of it in a political way. I thought about it as questioning, but I like employing surrealism now in maybe a different way than the past, the guys from the 40s and whatever, just doing something that didn't particularly have meaning to free your mind, to approach contemporary subjects um, by means of asking questions, and now maybe in a revolutionary. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but I like it very much.
I do too. Are there other surrealist artists who influence you or
Yeah, I
influence your
love the
thought
work
or
of, yeah, I really love the work of the women who ended up in Mexico, like Leonore Carrington and Remedios Vara. And I'd been exposed to Frida Kahlo early on, but you know, they're now more, the last 20 years or so, becoming more well known, and they're just so much more interesting to me. I mean, I love all surrealism, but you know, they employed a lot of metaphysics stuff and the
Mm.
occult. I don't know if you're familiar with either of those artists, and
Oh yeah.
personal things about motherhood and being female, and um, not just being out there juxtaposing strange things for the sake of surrealism in that sense. They kind of had more meaning, and that's the type of surrealism that I like. And visually, they're beautiful. I mean, for me, it's really important.
Oh yeah, incredible. And Leonora Carrington created a Tarot Majors
That's
series.
right. Yeah, I have that Fur Girl Press. I can never say their name right. He gave me
Fulgur,
one.
I believe. Yeah,
Yeah,
Fulgur Press.
FUGR. Fur Girl.
You know, one of the other things that, well, there's actually two things that, as you were talking about, and I'm thinking of the magician, um, and the way that you embody or channel the magician as an artist. There's two things that came to mind for me, and they're both sort of, I can relate them in, I think, to one question. They go back to diorama drama for me. The the life-size figures that you created with the costumes. So I see the costume that this magician
Mm-hmm.
is wearing. It's not as elaborate as
Mm-hmm.
the costumes that you created for the show, but those costumes embody so many different ideas of um, spirituality, particularly from African diaspora cultures like
Mm-hmm.
Hoodoo and Santeria, and
Mm-hmm.
but other elements as well. There were prayer books, I think, embedded in some of the dresses. I was wondering. I think that those are one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. Those outfits that you've
Oh,
created.
thank you.
You're welcome. Um, they're they're like as I see them, the manifestation of an incantation.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is where the other part of the question is going to dovetail into it. Can I find where I wrote it down here? Um, yes. So, for example, the naming of things. And speaking of incantations and spell making, to bring those things together, all these disparate things. Because when you create those dresses or those outfits, those
Mm-hmm.
costumes, um, it's not just fabric, it's all kinds of elements, spoons
Mm-hmm.
and things. Uh, there was one that you called Morna, and the title of the piece is the whole title of the piece, if I'm correct. Morna is the mother of the deceased whom she keeps in the dark depths of the earth. She protects all their secrets and memories, swaying to faint music, making the ground slippery with her tears.
Yeah.
And that's a
Um,
title, right?
yeah, I wrote stories. The titles were these stories that I wrote for each of these conjurer totem. I call them conjurers. So yeah, conjurer is a magician. So that is quite interesting that you pulled that card. And um, that idea came about from reading a book called Against Nature by Usman, this French writer, where he retreated from the world and society and just created his own reality. So I had this idea of like creating your own reality. So
Mm.
I made all these conjurers who had powers, magical powers, or specific powers or attributes, which has to do with magic or creating one's own reality. And so I did, with the outfits, try to come up with an idea like, okay, and that one I wanted to have to do with uh, death, a very gothic Victorian kind of sensibility towards um, towards that, and just how funerals were so different. Say 100 years ago, you would have wakes and that kind of thing, and it was like, yeah, you're sad and you cry for a week. I like these celebration of life things that people do now, but um, back then it was more of like a real dealing with death and accepting of death and kind of being there immersive in it, instead of like, let's make it all feel good. I don't know, it's just some opinion I have. I go back and forth on opinions about this. So yeah, so I'll have a particular idea about what this conjurer is going to be about, and then I just have all this stuff in the studio. So first I start with sewing the outfit on these mannequins, and I have to just put chicken wire underneath them to make them tall, because they were rather larger than life. They're maybe 8 or I don't know, they were rather tall, larger than me. And then whatever paraphernalia I would have around, like old pods or binoculars or hourglasses, or and then drawing on different cultures. Some of them I researched a bit on Russian folklore
Mm.
or African, or as you notice, a lot of Brazilian stuff, the Santeria, voodoo, hoodoo. Um, just trying to really expand on the idea of a conjurer or a magician, and really kind of having fun with thinking of it as fashion. Like, how would this conjurer, like, what would this style be? Like, what would this dress be? Some of them are very like French countryside, and another one I kind of did kind of a collision of Catholicism and African religions. So I'd found some old like priest outfit, but I had a lot of juju stuff around it, African sculptures and bits of fabric, and um, which is maybe a kind of literal idea of what was happening in different countries in Africa when you had the missionaries going over there and such. So um,
Because you
yeah, I
created
would
like
kind of,
almost like an altar at the base of these as well. There were objects placed
yeah, that one
around.
had objects at the base. Yeah. So sometimes I would splay out like, and I sewed all of those myself, sewing fringe on them or whatever bits I could find, making collars. And I found like pillow stuffing and dyed it black. So their faces weren't faces, but like this sort of polyfoam that kind of looked like hair and smoke instead of a head, um, just to sort of allude to some magical thing kind of happening, or some conjuring, going on.
What is that fascination, that intersection, that where does magic fit into your life? Because it shows up in your work so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I don't know so much about magic per se. I for the last almost 20 years, I'm with a group that um, we study a lot of occult and mysticism and esoteric knowledge, sort of based on this French group. It's a sort of secretive group, but it's L'Ordre de la Mère Divine, Order of the Divine Mother. So it's a feminist, it's a female group, and so I've always been very interested in that, and the occult and mysticism, and um, just there being this other reality. It ties into the attraction to surrealism and just other realms that, you know, possibly exist, or a means of escape, or just to be able to transport your mind and go somewhere. I'm very attracted to that per se. I'm not, I don't go to a bunch of magic shows or things like that, but I think that would be my interpretation of magic, just this appreciation of another realm that exists.
I read in an interview where you talked about wandering the aisles of your father's ceramic studio and
Yeah.
having an imaginary friend and talking to them in the
Hmm.
dark spaces.
Wow, you
So,
really read up on stuff. Yeah, being the firstborn and for 3 years until Allison came around, I had imaginary friends and yeah, they were really real, and it was this big warehouse, like an old Quonset hut in Redondo, in El Segundo, and it was very dark. And he had these sort of shelves, these like crates where the pottery or the dishes and things the wet clay would be drying. And yeah, I do have a pretty distinct memory of that. That'd be like my really early childhood memory. And it didn't last for too many years of my life. They sort of
it
uh,
feels like it's lasted throughout your life.
oh,
I mean,
maybe,
maybe
yeah.
not the imaginary friends
Yeah, my imaginary
conversations,
friends.
but that
Mm-hmm.
that part of you that is the imaginer, that is the conjurer and the creator and
Mm-hmm.
in the realm of surrealist.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe you're right, because even if I'll do a portrait of someone who's not specific, it's like I really want to reference some photos. I might combine photos. It's not just done out of my head. Like I really want them to feel real to me, and I'll give them a name and kind of create a personality for them when I do the
mm.
portraits. Yeah, it's not just, I don't know if I could even do it just out of my head. I have to be looking at something.
I love that. I love the way that you describe that because I love portraiture, and one of the things I love about it is seeing whether it's realistic or not, wondering who that is, what's happening, even if I know who it is, if it's somebody
Mm-hmm.
known to me or famous, still thinking if it's done well, what are they thinking in that moment? What is going through their mind?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just drawn out of myself and into them. Old photographs that you find in thrift stores, and you wonder who were these people and how
Exactly.
did
Yeah.
those pictures wind up
I know.
here? You know?
Yeah,
Um,
that's the melancholy part of it.
so
Yeah, often what I would do to try to get to that idea of what's going on in their head is there'll be a portrait, then I'll insert in black and white some sort of scene of nature or the ocean or a waterfall or somebody on a boat that can connotate, and it'll be in black and white, and the portrait, the person will be in color and kind of connotate a memory or something that happened or some sort of daydreaming. Or to me, that kind of adds a element to their personality.
I pulled the Page of Swords as we were
Mm,
talking there at the end uh,
okay.
here. And it's interesting to me because I don't connect typically the Page of Swords to the same sort of creativity or visual creativity that you do, but it also makes sense. I mean, pages are elemental earth and swords are elemental air, so it's they're both dry elements, and they're both one is hot and one is cold. Um, one is fast and one is slow. The page is a young energy. It's an expansive energy, um, excitable, right? But if I step a little bit away from the traditional meaning of the card and I just look at the image here, I see that excitement, that childlike excitement, and that sword, rather than being a pen, more like a paintbrush, right?
Oh.
Wielding a paintbrush up towards heaven, bringing
Hmm.
in a similar way to the magician, you know, drawing what is above down below,
Hmm.
but with like an effort to get off the ground and to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah, he's sort of
you,
airbound there. That's a great, these are great cards. I really
yeah,
love the action in them and the imagination. They're very
yeah, she's just really she really captured something in this deck that is the
different, huh?
essence of Rider Waite, but Smith, but a different lens on
Mm-hmm.
it. So my question that this elicits for me with you is, do you how do you do that? Do you feel that way? Do you feel like when you've got your idea, are you are you trying to pull it down from somewhere? Are you trying to pull it out of
Mm-hmm.
somewhere? Do you feel
Mm-hmm.
excited when you do that? When you get that idea?
Yeah, yeah. I get very excited about the ideas and the planning, but starting the painting, oh, I just hate that because, as I said, I'm not really technically trained, and I'm like, is this ever gonna look good? This looks so horrible. It seems to take forever for it to even look like a mildly competent person did it. But yeah, the ideas and the notion of bringing it to Earth is to actual planning it and coming up with the composition and I actually did a series called Monad based on these sort of esoteric studies that we had done. And monad is a spark and it's kind of embodies the idea of as above, so below,
Mm,
because the monad is a spark that exists in the whole, I'm probably saying something you could articulate better, but the whole plan or paradigm of the universe is repeated within society, the earth, the human body to the minutest cell. So I kind of did these portraits of women floating in space on the planets that were cells, like skin cells or that kind of thing. And just sort of really turning the scale of the things upside down. So the most minutest thing represented a planet, but they're floating through space, through the universe. And um, so, yeah, that was an idea of maybe trying to do that or in my mind how to kind of manifest that idea of the as above, so below, or this whole sort of interconnectedness. And so that's an idea where an example of where I get an idea and okay, how do I want to do this idea? They were pretty bright colors because I wanted it to feel dealing with the past and the future at the same time. So sort of uh, tumbling about the scale, also tumbling about the time period. So the women were maybe dressed in these Victorian outfits, but it feels futuristic because they're hurtling through space and the colors are very bright, like a really, really more bright palette than I normally use. And I did them quite small because they were really detailed, like trying to do the actual renderings of the cells and um,
mm,
their little outfits and things. So I thought, well, this idea needs to be on a small scale. Whereas, say, the Conjuring of Conjurers, that needs to be on a larger scale, more um, environmental or more of what's it called? You just sort of create a whole world, on a larger scale. So yeah, that seems to sort of relate to this as above, so below monad
yeah, and
idea.
pulling those ideas out of the
Right.
ether and then bringing them back down to earth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool. I we have about 7 minutes or so left. I want to open it up to questions if anybody has any. And if you do, you can either unmute yourself and jump in. You can put it in the chat and I'll read it, or you can raise your hand and I'll uh, unmute you if you want to speak. But surely somebody has questions. Nobody has any questions for Lezley? If not, I'll pull
Well,
another card and we'll talk some more. But uh,
let me just be sure to get in because you talked about my daughter. Did I mention that? Yeah, I did
oh
already
no,
mention.
you didn't. You talked to me about it before we
Mm-hmm.
opened it up. But yes, your daughter. is speaking of the lineage of art and
Hmm.
family legacies, your daughter is also an artist, and you want to talk a
Right.
little bit about what she has coming
Yeah,
up?
yeah. My daughter, Sola, she goes by Sola Saar, so she sort of continues the matriarchy. If you want to find her Instagram, I think it's Solita AAAR. Just type in Sola SOLA Saar SAAR. And she's done a really great tarot deck collages, and it's very provocative and uh, total different sensibility, and my very like sexy and edgy and dark and great. And there's going to be a tarot exhibition at the Morgan Library in New York next year in June. June 26th, I think, is when it opens, and they invited her to show her work and her deck, which I think she's getting printed up now. So everyone who's interested in the tarot, obviously they are if they're watching this show, or if you're in New York or the East Coast, that'd be a great show at the Morgan Library next year.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that. I'll go out there and check it out. It'll be
Oh, and
uh,
also we're going to have a show together at Walter Maciel Gallery. So she'll have her tarot collages. She'll have half the gallery, and I'll have the other half. That'll be in February in LA at Walter Maciel Gallery. So get those
this
two
coming
plugs in.
February 2026.
Yeah, January, February, correct. So
Oh,
in LA.
cool. Oh, great. That's awesome. Well, I'll do both.
You live here at least.
Yeah, and Letty lives in New York, and that'll the June end of June is a good time frame because the Tarot Festival next year will have concluded in Los Angeles by then,
Oh,
and
okay, right. Yeah. It might
the
be up for a while too, so we're good
cool.
then.
Any other questions? A couple more minutes if anybody's gotten up the courage or
Hey,
the idea.
I
Oh,
had a question. I typed it in the chat.
I see that now. Yeah.
So um Leslie, I wanted to know, like you talked about Huysmans earlier, and it turns out it's one of my favorite author. So I was just wondering if you read anything that really you really enjoyed last year, and if you have any like like book recommendation to give us, whether it's like art catalog or fiction or any esoteric book or anything that really kind of like rocked your world last year.
Gosh, I was having sort of problems with my eyes, so I've just been reading a lot of poetry, and actually, it may seem off topic, a lot of like revolutionary works, like going back. I used to work at the a radio station in the 70s uh, in Berkeley when a lot was going on with the Black Panthers and such.
Uh-huh.
And so, like Aimé Césaire, who is a surrealist poet, but he was talking about colonialism, or Assata Shakur, or just different biographies. And I just sort of found them comforting because we're all going through so much now where it just feels like this assault upon us. And it may not seem like it's comforting because, yeah, that all could have worked out better instead of being like squashed. These liberation movements and such from the 70s, but I still find a lot of comfort in them. And there's this Egyptian surrealist poet, Joyce Mansour.
Mhm.
I like her
Oh, I
book a
love
lot. It's called, yeah, Emerald
this
Wounds.
one.
I hadn't heard of her before. Emerald Wounds, Joyce Mansour. I think she was from Syria, and then Egyptian by heritage, but she ended up in Paris, and she was part of the surrealist movement. And so I try to read maybe lesser known uh, surrealist women writers. Those are the two that stand out.
That's amazing.
Oh,
Thank you so much, Leslie.
yeah. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else want to ask a question before we sign off?
I have a quick question. It's
Yeah, go
Jessica.
ahead.
You mentioned that you are kind of like creating these paintings. I just wanted to know, like, do you ever feel like you're in conversation with them, and do they kind of tell you who they want to be? I know that happens a lot with writers
Mhm.
as they develop characters, and I just wanted to know, like, do you feel like they kind of lead you to where they want to be in your work?
Hmm. Yeah, I guess because the nature of these works, they take me a long time to do. I wish I could just be like some artists and do some beautiful painting in a day or two. They're pretty planned and detailed. And so it's maybe not so much redirecting the actual painting, but since they are so detailed and labor intensive, it's a very meditative experience doing them, like just working, putting lots of hours into it. And I really enjoy that kind of activity, of just really spending a lot of time on a work and becoming part of it that way. So yeah, maybe with me, not so much as them being spoken to and altering the actual piece, but just sort of a dialogue while I'm doing it, a form of meditation, I suppose. So
Thank you.
and
If anybody has one last question, we can entertain that. Otherwise, anybody? All right. Oh, yes.
Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead, Anna.
sorry. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank the both of you for having this talk. This is the first time I've been to something like this, and I wanted to thank you, Leslie. I didn't know what to expect here, and I actually been really surprised and taken aback by the conversation in a very much strong way, positive way, and very much connected to it, specifically around what you mentioned earlier about uh, I believe you said slavery in Portugal and that kind of stuff. And a few years ago, I did one of these heritage things and found out that I have a Portuguese and West African background, which
Mhm.
shocked me because that's not the family that I knew. And
Mm.
so bringing it up here sort of gave me a little bit of affirmation because
Mhm.
the only thing that I can make sense why I am who I am today is had to be because of some historical slavery.
Mm.
And um, I'm an artist too, so this whole conversation has been enriching beyond my wildest dreams. So
Mm.
thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, I often deal with issues that are very part of my life and what have you. And I've since 35 years ago, I've often dealt with portraitures and questioning the notion of race because I'm pretty white presenting. Yet my mother is this very, very famous African American, Black artist. And um, so I've just often had questions about, well, are you as other people relate to you or perceive you, or are you your what you grew up with, or your DNA, perhaps in your case, something that maybe wasn't so revealed to you, but was certainly who you are within. And so early on, I would do portraits of people with mixed heritage, like Harriet Hemings, who was Sally Hemings' daughter, who'd been with, Thomas Jefferson and Marie Laveau, and not from an uppity point of view, mixed people are better, but this is my story, my actuality, my heritage, and just really getting it out there. And it was such an experience. I took this African Lisbon tour where we went from the bottom, where people would get off of the boat and sold, and hundreds of years ago, and Portuguese started all that stuff. So thank you very much for your comment. It was a really powerful experience, and something that maybe is difficult to articulate how to present that in the form of portraiture. Maybe I could have done it differently, but so something that was really, really important to me. Not that I'm Portuguese, I'm more like straight line from England down all the West African countries. So, but it's still a mixture of the colonizer and the colonized, that whole uh, complexity, contradictory tension.
Thank you for sharing that too, Leslie, and for being so vulnerable in that way. It's really uh, incredible to hear your story, and Anna to hear your story. Thank you for asking that, and thank you for your comments as well. I want to thank everybody today for being here. I want to thank Letty for giving us, Leticia for giving us the platform to have this conversation. I want to thank Lezley for being my guest. I just want to show you here at the end, these are the cards that we pulled today for the conversation: the Three of Cups, the Sun, the Magician, and the Page of Swords. And those were our guides today. I appreciate it, Lezley. Thank you so much for taking
Thank
the
you.
time
Thank you,
today.
James.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, everyone. And
you.
thank you,
Thanks,
James. It
Leticia.
was really amazing. Thank you.